My knuckles were raw, split open and stinging from the salt in my sweat, but I didn't stop punching the heavy bag. Thud, thud, crack. The sound echoed through the empty training compound in Lagos. It was 4 a.m. Most girls my age were sleeping or dreaming about boys. I was dreaming about perfect form. I threw a roundhouse kick, the impact so hard it nearly knocked the bag off its chain. I was 17, but in my world age didn't matter. Only survival did. My father, the head of the Viper security firm, walked in. He didn't clap. He didn't smile. He just tossed a thick manila folder onto the bench. "Pack your bags, Adanna," he said, his voice low and serious. "You're going to Seoul. And this time you're not going as a soldier. You're going as a high school student." I froze, wiping the sweat from my forehead. A student? Me? I knew how to dismantle a Glock in 10 seconds blindfolded, but I didn't know the first thing about algebra or school dances. I opened the folder. The first thing I saw was a photo of a boy. He was Korean, incredibly handsome, with sharp eyes and an arrogant smirk that made me want to punch the photo. Park Ji-Hoon, my father said. Star basketball player. Heir to the PK group. And currently the #1 target for the Red Dragon Syndicate. Your job is to be his shadow. He thinks he's untouchable because he can dunk a basketball. You need to make sure he doesn't end up dead before the playoffs. I looked at the boy's face again. He looked like trouble. The kind of rich, spoiled trouble I hated. Does he know? I asked. My father shook his head. No. If he knows you're a bodyguard, he'll fire you. To him, you are just a transfer student on a charity scholarship. Nobody. Keep it that way. Before we dive into this mission, if you love stories where the underdog secretly holds all the power, make sure you smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You do not want to miss how humble this arrogant prince is. Trust me, it gets messy. 3 days later, I was standing at the gates of Haneul High in Seoul. It looked less like a school and more like a 5-star resort. Students were getting out of black sedans that cost more than my entire village. The girls had perfect skin and designer bags. The boys walked with the swagger of people who had never been told no in their lives. I adjusted my blazer. It felt tight across my shoulders. My muscles were built for fighting, not for looking cute in a uniform. I took a deep breath. Target located. I heard the screaming before I saw him. It was coming from the outdoor basketball courts. A crowd of girls was cheering, holding up signs. I pushed through the crowd, needing to get eyes on the asset. And there he was. Park Ji-Hoon. He was taller in person, lean but muscular, moving across the court with a speed that I had to admit was impressive. He dribbled past 2 defenders, spun, and slammed the ball into the hoop with a ferocity that shook the backboard. The crowd went wild. He landed and flipped his hair back, soaking in the adoration like it was sunlight. He didn't smile though. He just looked bored. I watched him with a professional eye. Weakness identified, I thought. He favors his right side. He gets tunnel vision when he drives to the basket. If a sniper was on that roof, he'd be dead already. I was so focused on analyzing the perimeter that I didn't notice the game had stopped. The ball had bounced off the rim and rolled straight to my feet. Silence fell over the court. Ji-Hoon wiped his face with his jersey, exposing a set of abs that made the girls squeal, and walked toward me. He didn't ask for the ball. He just held out his hand, expecting me to scurry over and give it to him like a servant. I didn't move. I looked at the ball, then looked at him. Hey, he called out, his voice deep and dripping with annoyance. New girl. Are you deaf? The ball. My instinct was to kick the ball into his face at 80 miles per hour. But I remembered the mission. Be a nobody. I bent down, picked up the orange ball and tossed it to him. But I put a little too much spin on it. It hit his chest with a hard thwack, slightly harder than necessary. He caught it, but he stumbled back a half step. His eyes narrowed. The crowd gasped. No one made the prince stumble. He walked all the way up to the fence where I stood. Up close, he smelled like expensive cologne and sweat. He loomed over me, trying to intimidate me. You have a lot of nerve, he whispered, his dark eyes boring into mine. Do you know who I am? I looked him dead in the eye, keeping my face blank. Someone who leaves his left flank open when he dribbles, I said quietly, before I could stop myself. His jaw dropped. Confusion flashed across his face, quickly replaced by anger. "What did you say?" I said, "Excuse me, I'm late for class." I turned around and walked away, feeling his eyes burning a hole in my back. I knew two things instantly. First, I had just made an enemy. Second, protecting this boy was going to be the hardest mission of my life. Class was a nightmare. Of course, the universe has a sick sense of humor, so I was assigned the seat directly behind him. He spent the entire math class leaning back in his chair, trying to block my view of the board with his broad shoulders. He whispered jokes to his friends, the elites, pointing at my hair and my shoes. "Looks like she bought her uniform at a thrift store." One of his friends snickered. Ji-Hoon laughed, a cruel, cold sound. "Let her be," he said, loud enough for me to hear. "She probably walked all the way from the airport." I gripped my pen so hard it snapped in half. Ink leaked over my fingers. I took a deep breath. "Patience, Adanna. You have broken men's arms for less. But today you are a student." I cleaned up the ink, ignoring their laughter. But while they were laughing, I was working. I noticed something they didn't. Ji-Hoon's water bottle was sitting on the edge of his desk, but the cap was slightly askew. I had seen him seal it tight before class started. Someone had touched it. My eyes scanned the room. 3 rows over, a quiet boy with glasses was sweating, his leg bouncing nervously. He kept glancing at Ji-Hoon's water. Poison? Laxatives? Drugs? It didn't matter. It was a threat. The bell rang for lunch. Ji-Hoon stood up, grabbed his bag and reached for the water bottle. He was bringing it to his lips. "Stop!" I shouted, standing up abruptly. The whole class went silent. Ji-Hoon paused, the bottle inches from his mouth. He looked at me with pure disgust. "What is your problem, freak? Are you stalking me now?" "Don't drink that," I said, stepping out from my desk. "It's warm. You shouldn't drink warm water after practice. It's bad for cramps." It was a stupid lie, but I couldn't say, "I suspect a chemical agent has been introduced to your beverage." Ji-Hoon stared at me like I was insane. "You are officially the weirdest person I have ever met." He looked me right in the eye, unscrewed the cap, and tilted his head back to drink. I didn't think so. I reacted. I grabbed a textbook from my desk and threw it. Not at him, that would be assault. I threw it at the boy who was walking past him. The boy stumbled, bumping into Ji-Hoon hard. The water bottle flew out of Ji-Hoon's hand and splashed all over the floor. "You crazy!" Ji-Hoon shouted, his uniform soaked. He spun around to face me, his face red with rage. "Did you just throw a book at me?" "I slipped," I said, my voice flat. "You slipped." He stepped closer, towering over me. The entire class gathered around, phones out, recording. "You didn't slip. You did that on purpose. You're trying to get my attention? Is that it? You think because you're foreign and different, I'm going to find you interesting?" He scoffed, looking me up and down with a sneer. "You're nothing. You're just a nuisance. Stay out of my way, or I'll make sure you're expelled before the sun goes down." He stormed out, his entourage following him. I stood there, watching the puddle of water on the floor. It was fizzing slightly on the tile. Acid-based, I noted. Or a high-grade sedative. I had saved him, and he hated me for it. Perfect. The rest of the day was a blur of hostile stares. But the real test came after school. Basketball practice. I had to be there. I couldn't leave him alone, especially not after the water bottle incident. The threat was inside the school. I snuck into the gym, hiding in the upper bleachers behind a row of banners. The team was running drills. Ji-Hoon was angry, playing aggressive, pushing his teammates around. He was taking his frustration out on the court. Suddenly, the coach blew his whistle. "All right. Scrimmage match. Shirts versus skins. Ji-Hoon, you're captain of skins. Let's go." Ji-Hoon pulled his jersey off. I rolled my eyes at the girls in the front row, practically fainting. But then I saw it. Up in the rafters on the catwalk above the court. A shadow moved. It wasn't a student. The movement was too precise. It was a man, dressed in maintenance gear. But he wasn't holding a wrench. He was holding a knife, and he was cutting through the thick cable that held the massive digital scoreboard directly above the center circle. Ji-Hoon was walking to the center circle for the tip-off. My heart hammered against my ribs. I calculated the distance. If I yelled, he wouldn't hear me over the squeaking sneakers and music. If I ran down the stairs, I'd be too slow. The cable snapped, one wire left. I didn't have a choice. I vaulted over the railing of the upper deck. It was a 20-foot drop to the lower bleachers. I landed in a roll, ignoring the shock to my ankles, and sprinted toward the court. "Move!" I screamed. Ji-Hoon looked up, confused. "What?" I didn't stop. I tackled him. I hit him with the force of a linebacker, slamming my shoulder into his chest and driving him hard into the polished wood floor. We skidded 5 feet. Crash. A split second later, the massive scoreboard smashed into the ground exactly where he had been standing. Glass shattered everywhere, sending shards flying like shrapnel. Sparks flew from the broken wires. The sound was deafening, like a bomb going off. Silence. Absolute terrified silence. I was on top of him, covering his head with my arms to shield him from the glass. I could feel his heart pounding against my chest. A frantic hummingbird beat. I slowly lifted my head. The dust was settling. Ji-Hoon opened his eyes. He was pale, his arrogance completely gone. He looked at the crushed metal inches from his feet. Then he looked up at me. His eyes were wide, filled with genuine shock and something else. Fear. "You," he whispered, his voice trembling. "You just..." I pushed myself up, brushing glass out of my braids. I checked the rafters. The shadow was gone. The assassin had fled. "I told you," I said, my voice breathless but steady. "You have bad situational awareness." I stood up and offered him a hand. He stared at it. For a second I thought he was going to thank me. I thought the wall was breaking. But then his teammates rushed over. "Ji-Hoon. Oh my God. Are you okay?" His mask slammed back into place. He slapped my hand away and scrambled up on his own, dusting himself off aggressively. He looked at the wreckage, then at me. His face hardened. He couldn't handle the fact that the girl he called a nobody just saved his life. It hurt his ego too much. "I didn't need your help," he spat out, though his voice lacked its usual bite. "I saw it coming. You just got in the way again." I stared at him in disbelief. "Are you serious? That thing weighs a ton. You would be a pancake right now." "Stay away from me," he yelled, turning his back to hide the fact that his hands were shaking. "Coach, get this crazy girl out of here." I clenched my fists. Ungrateful brat. But as I turned to leave the gym, I saw him glance back at me. Just for a second. The look wasn't anger anymore. It was confusing. He was starting to realize that the math didn't add up. The next day things changed. I wasn't just the weird new girl anymore. I was a target. But not just for the assassins. Ji-Hoon had decided that I was a challenge to his authority. I walked into the cafeteria, and the chatter stopped. I went to my usual lonely table, but it was gone. In its place was a mountain of trash. I looked over at the center table, the king's table. Ji-Hoon was sitting there, an apple in his hand, smiling. "Oops," he called out. "Janitors must have missed a spot." I walked over to him. The whole cafeteria held its breath. I slammed my hand down on his table, leaning in close. "Listen to me, pretty boy. I'm not here to play games with you. I'm here to make sure you survive the week. So stop acting like a child." He stood up, matching my height. The tension was electric. "Survive? You talk like you're in a movie. You think you're tough because you got lucky in the gym?" He grabbed a basketball from under the table. "Prove it." "Prove what?" "One-on-one," he challenged, spinning the ball on his finger. "After school. If you win, I'll stop messing with you. I'll even apologize. But if I win, you leave this school. Forever." The crowd gasped. "A bet? With the state champion?" I looked at him. He was confident. He thought this was his world. He didn't know that my father made me dribble on sand dunes with ankle weights. "Deal," I said. "But when I win, I don't want an apology." "Then what do you want?" he scoffed. I smirked, leaning closer so only he could hear. "When I win, you have to tell me who you owe money to. Because someone is trying very hard to kill you. and I'm tired of guessing who it is. His eyes widened. I had hit a nerve. The bell rang. The showdown was set. But I knew something he didn't. The assassin from the rafters hadn't given up. And a public game on an open court? It was the perfect trap. The sun was beginning to set, casting long bloody shadows across the outdoor court. The entire school was watching. Teachers, students, even the janitors had stopped to look. Ji-Hoon stood at the top of the key, spinning the ball. He looked like a god of war in his expensive jersey, sweating and confident. I stood opposite him in my cheap gym shorts and a t-shirt, my face stone cold. Game to 11, he said, checking the ball. Ladies first. He bounced the pass to me. Caught it. The moment my hand touched the leather, the noise of the crowd faded. I didn't see students, I saw obstacles. I didn't see a hoop. I saw a target. Ji-Hoon crouched low, slapping the floor, taunting me. Come on, Bodyguard. Show me what you got. I didn't dribble. I exploded. I drove left fast. He shifted to block me, his reflexes sharp. But I wasn't playing basketball. I was using combat footwork. I feinted a punch, no a pass, with my shoulder freezing him for a millisecond. That was all I needed. I crossed over, blew past him, and laid the ball gently into the hoop. 1-0. The crowd went silent. Ji-Hoon froze, staring at the empty space where I used to be. He turned around, his face flushing red. Lucky shot, he muttered. Luck is for amateurs, I said, tossing him the ball. Check. The game turned into a war. Ji-Hoon was good, I'll give him that. He was powerful, using his weight to bully me in the post, scoring with aggressive dunks that shook the pole. He scored 3 times in a row, screaming at the crowd, feeding off their energy. He was winning 8-4. He got cocky. He started dribbling between his legs, smiling at the girls in the front row. Give up, he laughed, breathless. You're tired. I wasn't tired. I was waiting. I had been analyzing his breathing pattern. He gasped for air every third dribble. Weakness confirmed. On his next breath, I lunged. I stole the ball clean out of his hands. He reached for me, grabbing my jersey, a foul. But I spun out of his grip, stepped back behind the three-point line and released. Swish. 8-5. I didn't stop. I stole the ball again. And again. Layup. Jumper. Layup. I tied the game at 10-10. Ji-Hoon was panting now, sweat dripping from his chin, his eyes wide with panic. He was realizing that he wasn't playing against a girl. He was playing against a machine. Last point wins, I said, holding the ball. Remember the deal. You tell me everything. I saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of losing the game, but fear of being exposed. He nodded, desperate. I drove hard to the right. He jumped to block me, committing his entire body to the air. It was a mistake. I stopped on a dime, let him fly past me, and took the open shot. The ball hung in the air. Time seemed to slow down. And then I saw it. A flash of light on the roof of the science building, 300 yards away. A glint of a scope. My combat instincts screamed louder than the crowd. Sniper. The ball went through the hoop. Game over. I won. But I didn't celebrate. I didn't cheer. I sprinted. Get down. I screamed, my voice tearing through the cheers. Ji-Hoon was standing under the basket, looking confused, about to argue. I didn't have time to explain. I dove at him, tackling him around the waist, slamming us both onto the hard concrete just as a crack of thunder erupted. A bullet smashed into the metal pole exactly where his head had been a second ago. The crowd screamed. Chaos erupted. Students trampled each other trying to run. Stay down. I pressed his head into the pavement, covering his body with mine. What is happening? Ji-Hoon stuttered. His face pressed against the gravel, trembling. Did someone just shoot at me? I told you. I hissed, scanning the rooftops. You have bad situational awareness. Move. Now. I grabbed him by the collar and dragged him up. We ran. Another bullet chipped the ground at our heels. I shoved him toward the old equipment shed near the back of the gym. We crashed through the metal doors and I slammed the bolt shut, plunging us into darkness. It smelled like rust and old rubber. All I could hear was our heavy breathing. Adanna. Ji-Hoon's voice was shaking. You saved me. Again. I pulled out my phone, the screen lighting up our faces. I dialed my extraction team. Code red. Asset is compromised. Location: North Gym Shed. I need an armored extraction in 3 minutes. Hostiles are active. I hung up and looked at him. He slid down against the wall, clutching his knees. The arrogant prince was gone. He looked like a terrified little boy. Who are you? He whispered, looking at me with wide, watery eyes. You're not a student. You fight like a soldier. You talk like a cop. Who are you? I sighed, sliding down the wall to sit opposite him. The adrenaline was fading, leaving my muscles aching. I'm the person your father hired to keep you alive because you refused to have bodyguards. He blinked. My father? You work for the chairman. I work for Viper Security, I corrected. And right now, you are making my job very difficult. He laughed. It was a dry, hysterical sound. I treated you like trash. I made fun of your clothes. I tried to get you expelled. He looked at his hands. And you just took a bullet for me. I didn't take it, I said dryly. I dodged it. There's a difference. He looked up, and for the first time I saw the real Ji-Hoon. Not the mask he wore for school. Why? He asked softly. Why didn't you just quit? I was terrible to you. Because I won't quit, I said. And because, underneath all that hair gel and arrogance, you're not a bad kid. You're just lonely. He went quiet. The air in the shed changed. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was something else. He reached out across the dark space and touched my hand. His fingers were warm. I'm sorry, he said. And he meant it. I owe money to the Busan Viper gang. I gambled on some underground fights. I thought I could handle it. I didn't know they would come for my life. Gambling debts. I shook my head. You're an idiot, Ji-Hoon. I know, he whispered. He squeezed my hand. But I think I'm starting to like having you around. My heart did a stupid little flip. Focus, Adanna. He is an asset. But looking at him now with his messy hair and vulnerable eyes, it was hard to see him just as a job. 3 minutes is up, I said, pulling my hand away as sirens wailed outside. Let's go. My team is here. I kicked the door open. 2 black SUVs screeched onto the basketball court. Armed men in tactical gear poured out, securing the perimeter. The sniper on the roof had already been neutralized by our counter team. Ji-Hoon stood up, looking at the soldiers, then at me. Are you leaving? He asked, panic rising in his voice again. Is the mission over? The threat is neutralized, I said, checking my weapon. My job is done. No, he said firmly. He stepped in front of me, blocking my path to the SUV. No, you're not leaving. Ji-Hoon, get in the car. Not without you, he said. He looked at the lead security officer. She stays. She's my personal detail. Permanent assignment. If she goes, I'm not going back to school. The officer looked at me. I looked at Ji-Hoon. He wasn't ordering me like a servant this time. He was asking me, begging me. Fine, I sighed, hiding a smile. But if you ever throw a dodgeball at me again, I will break your arm. He grinned. It was a real smile this time. Deal. Before we get to the final scene, if you're loving this chemistry, make sure you comment love below. Do you think they should date? Or should she keep it professional? Let me know. The next morning, Haneul High was buzzing. Everyone was talking about the gang shooting and the police helicopters. I walked through the front gates. I wasn't wearing the ill-fitting uniform anymore. I was wearing my own clothes, a sharp blazer, combat boots, and my hair down. I walked with my head high. The bullies, the queens, were waiting by the lockers. They saw me and started whispering, ready to launch their insults. Look who's back, the leader sneered. Did you get lost during the shooting, trash? Before I could answer, an arm wrapped around my shoulder. A heavy, warm arm. The entire hallway gasped. Ji-Hoon stood next to me. He was wearing sunglasses to hide his bruised eye, but he looked cooler than ever. He pulled me close, glaring at the girls. Watch your mouth, he said, his voice ice cold. You are speaking to my partner. Partner, the girl stammered. But Ji-Hoon, she is the only reason I'm standing here, he said loud enough for the whole corridor to hear. He took off his sunglasses and looked down at me. The arrogance was there, but it was softer now. Protected. Come on, Adanna. We're going to be late for math. And I need you to help me with my homework. I heard you're a genius. I rolled my eyes, but I didn't push his arm away. I charge extra for tutoring, rich boy. Put it on my tab, he winked. We walked down the hallway together, the sea of students parting for us. The bodyguards were invisible, watching from the shadows, but I knew I didn't need them anymore. The prince of the school had my back and I had his. The mission had changed. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something much more dangerous. Love. And honestly, that scared me more than any sniper. End of story. Thanks for watching. If you want to see Adanna take on the Mafia in Season 2, hit that subscribe button and share this video with a friend. See you in the next story.